with Ride Finders.
Did is he doing just technical today? Carrie.
Hi, I'm Carrie. I'm with Plan RVA. I work for our transportation department.
Awesome.
Yes, I had technical difficulties myself. Sorry about that.
Welcome. Yeah, that's Sid. He's our, if you ever need help, that's our guy. We have Amy.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Amy Inman. I'm the Director of Transportation Development for New Kent County.
All right, and then I think we're leaving the rest of the head of the Plan RVA, Janice, then Miles, and then Salu.
Hi, everybody. I'm Janice Scott. I'm the Board Relations Manager for Plan RVA.
Hi, I'm Miles Bushing. I'm the Director of Transportation at Plan RVA and also Plan RVA's representative on TAC.
And I'm Sulabh Ariel, Plan RVA staff, alternate for the TAC.
And I'm sorry, John.
Yeah, I already went.
Oh, sorry. I thought you did. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I know. I think we still have Sharika and Patricia.
I can't. Oh, wait. I'm not seeing them on my screen. Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I have Sharika and Patricia. We have GRTC and Ride Finders also. I'm sorry.
I can just say a quick hello. I'm Patricia Robinson with GRTC. I'm the Assistant Director of Planning and Scheduling.
Awesome.
And I'm Sharika Ruffin, Executive Director here at Ride Finders.
Awesome. And I would ask Ms. Scott if that would have served as my roll call, but if you could just certify the quorum. We're on mute. I'm sorry, Janice.
Sorry, we do have a quorum, and I've noted all of the members who are present.
Thank you. Very good. Do we have any considerations to the amendments, or I'm sorry, any amendments to the meeting agenda? All right, moving to item 4, approval of our March 11th TAC meeting minutes. Is there a motion for approval?
I move approval of the minutes.
Thank you.
A second.
John O'Keefe, I'll second.
All right, Janice, you have 2 seconds there to choose one. I think we had Josh with Nora giving the motion.
Okay.
All right, item 5, open public comment period.
Madam Chair, I think we need a vote.
Oh, shucks, burn it. I'm moving on. Can we get a voice vote on approval of those minutes?
Aye.
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 Sorry. Having a good allergy day. Allergy fog a little bit. All right, now we're ready for item 5, open public comment period.
Chair Clark, we have a number of people as attendees today. None of them have submitted requests to address the group, but it looks like some of these people are new. If it's okay with you, I could ask that any of the attendees who wanted to address the group, if they raise their hand. I'm just not sure. I saw that a couple hands raised a few minutes ago.
Okay, so we do have, if you would ask those participants if you can hear me, could you raise your hand on the Zoom or identify yourself to wanting to speak?
All right, I have Stephanie Power. She has raised her hand. We don't do this very often. We don't have too many people requesting to speak, but I have tried to allow her to speak. Stephanie, can you let us know if, go ahead and say something and let us make sure.
Yeah. Good morning. I'm here. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Did you want my camera on, or shall I be a blank screen? Either or is good.
Whichever you like.
No, I don't have the option to add my camera, so that's why I asked. But no worries. I'll just say hello. I see some familiar faces in this room, so it's good to see you. I work with RVA Rapid Transit. We are a local kind of regional nonprofit, and we advocate for a better bus system in Richmond, Chesterfield, and Henrico, and everywhere that GRTC serves. So I saw on today's agenda that you were going to be voting on an increase of $2 million for Ride Finders, which of course is a division of GRTC. And, you know, we partner with GRTC because we really believe in the value of transit, that we believe in the value that it brings to so many people's lives, myself included. I am a bus rider and a bike rider. And actually 2 weeks ago, I actually entered into the world of car ownership because I now live in Henrico County, quite far from Richmond City where I live. But basically, I think a $2 million increase in funding for Ride Finders could really help them expedite their efforts to get more people out of their individualized cars and ride sharing using public transit. And we know that when ridership for public transit increases, it makes GRTC more possible to receive more state funding and federal funding. It helps the system grow and helps the services improve. So anytime I see a chance to speak on behalf of improving public transit for our region, I want to take that opportunity. And of course, it also can help us reduce carbon emissions and really improve and protect our air quality, which is a rising issue in our region, as well as rising temperatures. So I'm all about that, and I'm excited for your vote today. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Stephanie.
We have a Miss Kamara.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Hi. Yes, welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name's Fatima Kamara. I'm with the Virginia Conservation Network. We also partner with RVA Rapid Transit. So I just wanted to enter a public comment on the $2 million for, sorry, that's my dog, for Ride Finders. So yeah, as Stephanie just said, well, I'll take a step back. So about 50% of carbon emissions in Virginia are from light duty vehicles and transportation. So when we have an opportunity to lower that emissions by offering people an alternative to cars, I think it's important that we take it. And any encouragement we can give to people to use a more efficient mode of transportation, I think we should take that. And eviction is extremely high in Richmond, so kind of I don't know what Stephanie's situation is, but that her story is similar to a lot of other people. When the city becomes unaffordable, you have to move out to the county and you have to drive or not work. And so if we can give folks a way of getting to work within the city or outside the city, but especially to be able to afford to stay living in the city with free transit, that again will help reduce our carbon emissions because they can continue to live in the city by saving that money and not having to drive and commute all the way from Henrico or anywhere else. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Scott, does that conclude?
Yes, ma'am. I don't see any other hands raised, so I think that should be all of our public comment.
Well, thank you very much. Very exciting to have the public input into our processes. So thank you both very much for participating today. I do not have anything for our TAC chairman's report. We have a pretty full agenda. So I will move to item 7, which is talking about the UPWP or the Unified Planning Work Program for FY26. Miles.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. This item is our fiscal year 26 Unified Planning Work Program. As you all know, the Unified Planning Work Program is the outline of all the projects that we're going to be working on for the upcoming fiscal year and also serves as our budget. Some of you may have noticed that there's not a budget component included in what was attached in the agenda packet. We do not have the updated numbers for the next fiscal year, so rather than potentially changing them between TAC and the policy board, we're just going to develop a single set of budget numbers to provide for the policy board based on the tasks that TAC recommends. So What I wanted to do today was just spend a few minutes walking through each of the activities and the tasks that are in the draft UPWP. And I wanted to start with this page first, which was included in your packet, which is really the overview of how to read the page. It's very similar to what we've had in previous years, but I did want to highlight some of the changes that we've made. So the first part, we've included all of the federal planning factors on each project page. So we've always had this as a table separately. We wanted to make sure that it was very easy to find those. So instead of having to go somewhere else in the document, right there on the task page. We've got the task name, the purpose, all our deliverables, deadlines, and who's working on it. But the new pieces that we have is the guiding plan section. So for every piece of our work across Plan RVA, we're doing this. So the transportation work is all guided by the LRTP. Well, each of our sub-programs also has their own planning product that is the guide. And so we wanted to make sure those were highlighted. It also allows us to highlight where there's a crossover between other work that we do at Plan RVA and the NPO's work. And then we also have key task indicators. This is really just our first attempt at some sort of progress. How can we measure how we're doing in that area? So this one's obviously the safety page, the federal performance targets around people killed and seriously injured in the region. And so the idea is that we're able to track year over year how we're doing with each of those programs. We have a guiding plan that we're either implementing or updating at any given point. And then those deliverables are all shaped by the guiding plan and the progress that we're making. And so what I want to do now is just walk through each of the 4 activities and the tasks and some of the major deliverables, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that the TAC has. So the first activity that we have is it's still the same 4 that we've always had. So program administration is the first one. One thing that we've done this year is to consolidate all of it into a single task. So rather than having a separate one for budget and a separate one for administration, it's just all smushed back into administration. Some of the key deliverables that I want to highlight, we have our federal certification review is scheduled for this next year. So we're due one every 4 years. The last visit in person was August of 2021, and the report came out in the spring of 2022. So sometime this fall, we're expecting a second or a new federal certification visit and all that entails. So that's included in here. And then obviously developing next year's work program is included. Everything else in this category is really continuing the meetings, making sure that we're maintaining the budget and oversight, making sure staff is continuing to be able to participate and share our good work across the nation as well. The second activity is what we're calling data coordination and engagement. This is the same one that we've had before, but basically it's everything that isn't transportation planning, but feeds into transportation planning. So this is our public engagement efforts. It's all of our data and modeling work. It also includes all the crosswalks with other planning areas like housing and economic development, environmental planning through the NEPA process, and sort of hazard mitigation with a resilience lens. So outreach and engagement, this is really the work that Holly's team does to support the MPO. There's no plans or updates that are going on. It's really maintaining a lot of the outreach and efforts that are ongoing, supporting the LRTP, all of those pieces that are happening right now, but no specific deliverables. You'll notice that we didn't have the performance indicator numbers filled in yet. And that's because our engagement for this phase of the LRTP wraps up in the middle of this month. So we want to make sure that we have all that information captured before we take it to the policy board. The next task that we have is our data and modeling. So this is the travel demand model and any other data work that we need to do to ensure that we have a data-informed planning process. The big products that we have right now are all travel demand model related. So for the LRTP, we need to do some updates to our current travel demand model, updates for existing and committed projects to be able to then use it to score and evaluate projects for the LRTP starting in the winter. The other thing that we have in here is the next travel demand model. So our model base year is 2017. We need to have a new model in place by 2027. So we need to start the process of preparing that next model and preparing for that update. That would include developing new TASs So developing the new geographies, and then starting to coordinate with VDOT and Tri-Cities on the game plan for the longer model development process. Under housing and economy, this is really where we're supporting economic development and housing work across the region as it ties into transportation. So some of the work that we'll be focusing on is supporting the comprehensive economic development strategy, focusing on transportation infrastructure, supporting GRTC and the city with the transit-oriented development plan for North-South BRT, and then also supporting the update for the regional housing market value analysis. As housing feeds into transportation and housing affordability, like we just heard on the public comments. So really making sure that we have the opportunity to build housing and economic development into all of our transportation planning. The next one is system readiness. This is our new name for what we've previously called a resilience. This is basically avoiding and recovering from man-made and natural disasters. The big deliverable that we have in this bucket this year is combining various efforts that we have. So on our environmental side, we have an extreme heat analysis and data that we've been working on for several years. As you all know, we're working on a sidewalk gap analysis around transit stops. So putting those together, looking at extreme heat and how to mitigate extreme heat for access to the bus stops. So trying to put that all together into a comprehensive analysis. And then lastly, we have environmental linkages. This is really the NEPA component of things. A couple of things that we're focusing on for major deliverables. The first is regional mapping of criteria pollutants. This was a request that came from the LRTP's advisory work group, and so we're trying to put that together to see if we can have a standardized map for the region. The other thing that we're working on, we have developed a regional ecological framework. So this is a best practice with federal highways for planning and environmental linkages. It's basically trying to do a lot of the NEPA work on the front end. So it's essentially a raster data set that we can use and incorporate in project evaluation, in planning. That is being updated as part of our natural resources plan, but we want to then develop the framework on how we're going to use it for all of our transportation plans, with the end goal of ultimately getting to something closer to a merged process where we can have NEPA being taken care of while we're doing transportation planning rather than doing transportation plans and then NEPA. So that's everything in that sphere. Then we have long-range planning. So this is our traditional transportation planning bucket. So we've got the LRTP. As you all know, the LRTP is due October of 2026. So basically everything else that we have to do for the 2050 plan will be completed during this upcoming fiscal year. So candidate project lists, scoring and evaluating, developing a constrained plan, and then evaluating the impacts of our plan. All of that will take place over the next fiscal year. And then we have all of our modal programs. So under transit, it's really the big deliverable is working with GRTC on the regional public transportation plan for fiscal 27. And then most of it is supporting implementation of GRTC's efforts, the recommendations of the rural transportation analysis, which should be coming to you next month. Under active transportation, we have a pretty active plan for next year. First, it's a TAP year, so all of the transportation alternatives projects will go through this program. The other two things that we have on more of the planning side, we want to work on improving our framework for bike count data. As many of you know, we have 2 mobile counters that we have in the office that we can lend out, but we want to look at how we can best deploy those along with the existing fixed counters, and also potentially looking at more fixed counters across the region in the future. So figuring out a strategy so we can get good bike counts across the entire region. The second thing, and we talked about this last month, is really looking at that western spine of our spines and spurs strategy. We have the Capitol Trail, we've got the fall line. The western spine right now is kind of several different lines that don't actually all line up and don't all meet, and they don't have a way to get into the city. So figuring out that corridor, how do we get from the city, from the fall line, from the Capitol Trail, out to Henrico, and then do we go down to Chesterfield into Powhatan? Do we go through Goochland? What does that look like? So figuring out the exact alignment so that when we continue building out the fall line, we then have the next major trail to focus on for the region. And then finally, under the freight and intermodal program, our big focus, we're continuing the literature review and best practices review as we build toward updating our intermodal strategy. But the big thing is we're going to have a dedicated freight page on the website with dashboards for freight data, because we feel like we need to have somewhere that we can point you all to if you're interested in information on freight in the region. And then this finally brings us to the last activity, which is our short range planning. So this is the projects that are today, not the 20-year visions. So first of all, there's financial planning and programming. So we'll have a full-blown RSTP CMAQ cycle next year. We also have a tip update. So we have to develop a new tip in the next year. So this is going to be a year where we have to develop a UPWP, finish our LRTP, and develop a whole new tip all at one go. We are trying to align these up as much as possible so we have a single conformity process for both the tip and the LRTP. That's our aim right now. So that's going on. And then obviously our annual obligations reports, which we publish every December. The other component of short range planning has historically been our performance-based planning. We have split that into two separate buckets now. So we have safe streets and roads. We've heard you. We've spent a lot of time talking about safety over the past year. So what we've done is split this out as its own dedicated program and task. And we are going to be updating the safety plan, incorporating all the safe streets for all plans that have been completed throughout the region, and then updating the analysis for the remainder of the region. The other big thing is coordinating that roadmap for regional safety campaign and messaging. As I've mentioned before, we can't use our PL and 5303 money to do that, but mapping out a strategy is something that we can use. So that's what we're looking to do in the Safe Streets and Roads program. And then finally, we have system reliability. This is kind of the balance of the performance-based planning and programming. So this is the pavement condition, bridge condition, CMP data. We just wrapped up our CMP update as part of the LRTP, so we don't have any updates on the plans for this component. So most of this is just ongoing maintenance and monitoring of the data across the region. So that is a summary in very brief of all the tasks and activities. I am happy to answer any questions that you have right now. I just want to reiterate before I go, though, the request today is for a recommendation from TAC for approval of these tasks, so we can move this forward for the policy board to review the UPWP next month. And with that, I will stop sharing.
Okay, thank you, Miles. We do have a question. Nora?
First, I have to say, Miles, fantastic job presenting that. Really great presentation and helpful information for us. I'm a little concerned about the budget portion, though. Not that we need to get into your budget numbers, but it's a lot of projects here that, and I don't know how many of them are attached to federal funds that may or may not exist going into next fiscal year. So do you have any insight to what you all are thinking? Do we need to prioritize some of these projects and say, if there's not enough money, this is one we would recommend cutting?
So we have an internal budget using current year numbers, and we think that we're able to provide all of these. Some of these deadlines are not in the fiscal year, so they extend into the fiscal 27 as well. And so that gives us a little bit more time to get those completed. The other thing, and this is not included in this budget, is we have the PPPP, the Planning Prioritization Pilot Program grant, which was announced in January. We still haven't finalized paperwork. It's been caught up in all of the hold, but that will also allow us to do a lot of the travel demand modeling and the project scoring and evaluation work that's built into this. So that is additional funding coming on top of this to support aligned efforts with what we're doing. So I guess we're not asking for a prioritization. I think we have a plan to be able to extend these into the next fiscal year as needed. But I'm happy to take any recommendations on that front.
Thank you, Miles. And just for a bit of information, I just quickly went to FY25 UPWP, and it was like a $3.2 million budget with each of the categories. Of course, the long-range transportation plan had more dollars. So I would say that probably and or about that would be what we are what they would probably be trying to accomplish all of these things. And he's also stated that they could move those over into fiscal years based on it. So I think it's really checking on the priority. I didn't know if Amy, we wanted to just look back at the public transportation to make sure that hit what we wanted for the rural moving forward, because we do want to make sure we're integrating that in our planning. Wood.
Thanks, Miles. Thanks, Dirona. A couple things. I just wanted to ask one question, then make one statement regarding the UPWP. Question is, I love how you've broken everything out into the categories. My question is, will you provide some additional documentation how those categories roll up into the activity line items and kind of summarize things on that level?
Yes, we have a separate spreadsheet that crosswalks it to the ALI.
Thank you. Second thing is I wanted to address some of the federal funding questions. As of now, I just checked the Federal Transit Administration's website, and we are still waiting on apportionment tables that tell us how much 5303 and 5304 funds have been assigned to each of the states. Once we have that information, we will be able to make our formula assignments to the MPOs and get that information out as soon as possible. But at this time, that information still is unavailable.
Thank you. And then Miles, have we thought about if there is some drastic touch to those dollars? To Nora's point, what would we decide to slim down?
Yes, ma'am. I think the in terms of the key products, the LRTP, the TIP, and UPWP are mandated. Those are required. So those will stay in regardless. The additional modal planning efforts are sort of the secondary piece that could be cut. So the Western spine alignment, some of the work on the freight program, those are the pieces that we could pare back pretty easily. I do think that the safety program is something that we would want to continue regardless. I think getting to that regional safety action plan is important. I think we've heard it from all of you. So it would be my preference to keep that and move the modal programs out.
Okay, thank you. Amy?
Hey, good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. So in terms of the rural transit piece, I think they're coming out with some good recommendations. I mean, obviously, New Kent and Charles City, we have advanced with our own study with Bay Transit and have good recommendations that we anticipate will be implemented beginning in July, which will include microtransit and increased or better rural on-demand service. Now, in terms of the rural recommendations for the other localities, I think there's still some questions out there that staff is working on. So I think we really need to have a better grasp on that. And I guess to Nora's point, in terms of the funding, these are very significant initiatives that are being asked of staff. And I guess I really would like to understand the level of funding that we're putting on each of these activities. I know in this year's work program, I think there were some expectations that I thought we were doing some things that we didn't really get where I thought we were going in this year's work program. So I really would like to understand what is the level of effort, who's going to be doing it, what's the staff assignments, not trying to micromanage, but just wanting to make sure that we can really achieve all these things, because this is a lot of work, right? So maybe having that information would be helpful prior to advancing this UPWP. I'll just put that out there. And also, Miles, just one more thing. I don't see anything about our Vision Zero and communications out. I mean, I think you have that on maybe regional safety, but I know we were going to get into some action plan this year, this next fiscal year with this work program. And I'm trying to look through here and see where that really is in your work program.
Yeah, I'm happy to pull that back up, but both of those were under the safety component. So we have update the regional transportation safety plan, upgrade it to a safety action plan, incorporating the local plans and analysis, and then establish the roadmap for a regional safety campaign as messaging. So those are the two components to what you were just asking, Amy.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you.
And so Miles, if you could also give me a point of clarity, approving the draft task still have to go again to the policy committee. Is there anything else that will come back to TAC regarding this? It sounds like this will move forward after our vote and not come back to us at all.
We're not planning for additional requests for action, but we can come back with an update on the budget. And it sounds like the concern from TAC is really on, can we fund all these initiatives? And I think we can lay out the funding strategy and how all of that works for TAC and walk you through that at the next meeting, if that would be advisable, Madam Chair.
Yeah, and could you add just kind of at least maybe I don't know if you have to put like a staff name, but maybe the division or something that will tackle.
Yes, we have a lead staff identified for each of the deliverables already.
Okay, thank you. Amy, did you have more questions?
I'm sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. Just one more question, Miles. Is there like an annual or a quarterly update that we receive on the progress associated with these that maybe I just have missed? Just to know that we're on target. These are high level sort of deliverables. So we're, the devil's in the details on these things and really understanding exactly what's going on. I mean, when you think about, supporting GRTC on, the pulse, what does that mean? Are you just doing the modeling work? And then what's associated with that? That's a huge task in and of itself that I think would require a significant amount of resources, depending on what level of work you're doing.
Yes, ma'am. So we have each quarter there is a work status report, but it goes currently to the policy board and not to the TAC as the policy board's oversight of their work program. I'm happy to provide a copy of that, but that's what we're providing on a quarterly basis to VDOT, DRPT, and the policy board. But we can definitely provide that to the TAC as well. But that walks through kind of what we're doing under each of these deliverables that we have listed in the UPWP.
Okay, great. Thank you, Miles.
Yeah.
Madam
Thanks,
Chair.
Miles. All right, so we do have an action item, and we are looking for a motion from the TAC to recommend approval of the draft FY, and it should be 26 Unified Planning Work Program task, or is it 25 per with the?
No, you're correct, Madam Chair. It's 26.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Barb, I'll recommend approval.
Sharon Smidler, second.
Thank you. I don't know if you all have my note on here. So I guess we'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Scott, thank you. That's been.
Okay. Let's see, Miss Amos.
Aye.
Vice Chair Adams.
Aye.
Miss Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Gillespie.
Aye.
Mr. Badunez. Mr. Badunez.
We have lost Joe.
Okay. Miss
I
Smiley.
muted, I was unmuted and then I muted myself and spoke. So, aye.
He's the soccer field.
Miss Smidler.
Aye.
Miss Inman.
Aye.
Oh, let's see. I'm sorry. Chair Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Bushing.
Aye.
Mr. O'Keefe.
Aye.
Mr. Hudson.
Aye.
Miss Robinson.
Aye.
And Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you. Moving to item 8. And Ms. Scott, I don't know, can you see, I think before we'll have the city of Richmond, I think we have some staff on for this particular item as well. So we'll go to item 8, the FY 24-27 TIP amendment for Jenk Road 2-lane improvements UPC 19035.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so thank you so much, Madam Chair. I have one TIP amendment today focusing on the Jenk Road Improvement Project. So this amendment is being requested by VDOT, and it is required because the cost of the project has increased over time. So this is a project that I know a lot of you are already familiar with. It is a wide-ranging project that seeks to improve accessibility, safety, multimodal transportation, drainage, and aesthetics along Jenk Road, mainly between Lakemore Road and Forest Hill Avenue. Key improvements include a shared use path, sidewalks, curb and gutter installation, raised medians, as well as an upgraded traffic signal at Forest View School Drive. So here we have our tip block. And the requested action today is that the TAC should recommend the approval as requested by VDOT. If there are any questions, I would be happy to take them.
Barb?
So is the tip amendment just to get money to move forward with construction? Or what are we amending?
I think this is a cost increase.
Okay, so just adding additional funds for all phases. What stage is the project in? Is it PE right of way construction?
It's construction.
Okay, so adding more money for construction. Has it been advertised?
I think they had to up the tip right now in order to, because it's above the tip amount. So in order to even advertise, to award, you have to increase the tip.
To advertise or award. Okay. All right. Thanks.
And Madam Chair, if I can just provide the clarification, the increase was almost 8.8 million of local funds on the project.
Thanks.
Do we have any additional questions, Joe?
Yes, I apologize. I had to step away for a moment. So we're talking about the existing project request. Is that right?
No, this is a tip amendment.
I got you. I apologize.
Yeah, we do have a conversation about the existing, I think that's 2 items down on the agenda. This is the procedural to amend the tip to increase the cost of the project.
Yep.
So that's what we're seeking.
I just didn't know where we were on the agenda. Okay, so no comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. So with that, do we have a motion for recommend approval of the tip amendment requested by VDOT? And I'm not sure if VDOT wants any additional input.
So I can clarify a few things. As I understand it, this project's been advertised at least once, maybe twice. So the, cost increase in the interim's what's triggered the tip amendment. It exceeded the sliding scale, is what everybody said. So Barb, this is all about trying to get it positioned so that it can move forward with re-advertisement and award.
Thank you.
Any other questions for me?
No, thank you. Back to the TAC members for a motion for approval of the tip amendment to increase the project cost.
Make the motion.
Thank you. We have the motion. Do we have a second?
Second. That's Barb.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Scott?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Amos?
Aye.
Vice Chair Adams?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Gillespie?
Aye.
Mr. Vadunez?
Aye.
Ms. Smidler?
Aye.
Ms. Inman?
Aye.
Chair Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Bushing?
Aye.
Mr. O'Keefe?
Aye.
Mr. Hudson?
Aye.
Ms. Robinson?
Aye.
And Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to item 9. Now this is we broke out the 2 requests. This is the flexible regional funding right finders request. We do have a presentation. Miles, you want to start off and then we'll go to.
Yeah, I'm just going to provide a very, very quick introduction and then turn it over to GRTC or Ride Finders. But just as a reminder, what we were looking at last time is that there's been a decrease in funding in RRTP CMAQ and carbon reduction program. We have an estimate of how much is available for each of those programs. But as you'll recall, the funding cuts were most heavily impacting the first 2 fiscal years of the work program. We have been working with VDOT to try and move some of that money around, look at the new project schedule. So we're going to be able to free up some of the funding in those first years. But it's tighter than it would have otherwise been because there has been a reduction in funding. So our estimate in CMAQ is about 7.9, but you can see the bulk of that is the new fiscal year that's coming in. And then the 4.7 with the bulk of that coming in the last 3 fiscal years. And then there is previous in each of the programs as well that we can use to address these requests. So with that, I am just providing the groundwork. I am happy to turn this over now, and I believe the presentation was shared with each of you previously by Janice, but I'm happy to turn this over if Adrian or Sharika wants to present this item and the request a little bit more in depth. I know there's been a lot of discussion around this one.
Oh, okay. I'm kind of a little bit not sure where the presentation is, if it's been shared or not.
I can pull it up and share it if that would be helpful.
Yeah. So basically, this was a request for us to expand our transit program. Ride Finders, we're a regional program, and we really focus on carpooling and van pooling. And we promoted transit, but this would allow us to expand our program in terms of being able to do outreach with employers, with the community to get more people riding transit. I don't know if I'm able to advance this, Miles. So that's kind of just an overview of CMAQ and some of the eligible costs with that. And this kind of talks about what our purpose is and what we do. I'm not going to go through all of this, but part of what we do is trying to improve air quality, conserve energy. We work with employers, we work with individuals, and then we also have an advisory board, which also serves as a planning, helping us to guide the organization in the things that we want to accomplish. You go to the next one. And this is kind of an overview of all of our programs and services. The City of Richmond had an employee trip reduction program that we actually helped start many, many years ago. But as you can see, some of the programs and services that we provide also being part of the city's program was part of our larger TDM program. Next slide. So what we're looking to do is to have a regional trip reduction program that's specifically focused on transit. It's kind of a mesh of our program and with the City of Richmond's employee trip reduction program. And we're kind of consolidating that into a regional trip reduction program where we're trying to get more people on transit and taking transit. And this will be managed by us. And there's our purpose and the objectives that we're hoping to accomplish. We're getting more people taking transit, reducing single occupancy, reducing the vehicle miles traveled, all the things that we would normally do with our carpool and van pool program, we're looking to do with the transit program. These are some of the emissions impacts of transit that GRTC was able to provide for us. It's looking at fixed route, And it also looked at microtransit, which is newer service that they've been providing. And this goes back to some of the transit impacts. This is a survey that GRTC did. They were looking at fare free, and did that influence people to take transit? But we know moving into the future that that may not be an option, but we still want to capture people taking transit. We're going to be doing surveys to see the modal split, and just trying to make sure that we continue on this road of getting more people on transit. See, these are some of the ways that we're going to measure the impact of if we're allowed to have the funding for this program, looking at the vehicle miles reduced, reduction in SOVs, single occupant vehicles, looking at how we are engaging the greater Richmond region, and especially with employers. We've done boots on the ground where we've gone to employer sites, we've visited, we've handed out transit schedules. And a lot of people didn't realize, oh, well, transit comes right by here. We can do surveys with their employees to gauge the interest. So there are a number of ways. One of the things that we wanted to do is also track the modal split and to be able to see the people that are actually taking transit. There's an app that we partner with the Department of Rail and Public Transportation called Connecting VA. We can get people to register there, and that's another mechanism where we can survey people from there and find out, did they take transit before this? What encouraged them to take transit? How long have they been taking transit? Just a number of ways that we can work with employers, individuals, to really be able to track those SOV, the VMTs, and all of those things that we haven't captured as much before. And that is the funding request, is the $2 million to support those efforts. And we will be working very closely with GRTC in this effort, Plan RVA. So we've got a number of partners that we'll be working with to expand this program. And then I can answer any questions. I think Patricia's on here and she can answer any from that will help us as well.
Thank you. We do have a hand up. Wood?
Can you speak a little more on how you guys reached or came up with that $2 million figure? I'm just curious, if that's a combination of staff time and outreach materials or other things. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a combination of those things. Also, Patricia, if you want to speak to that a little bit, because we did work with them to get this number, but it's a number of things that we'll be doing especially with the outreach, the marketing, all of those things to be able to get people on transit.
Do you anticipate that would include if GRTC was to have to return to collecting fares, any sort of fare passes or vouchers or things for people to ride transit?
I can jump in with that one. So at this point, GRTC is not assuming resuming fares at the current moment, so that's not projected into our costs at this time.
Thank you very much.
Sorry about that. Josh?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question about the survey you mentioned that was kind of a constant option for people to sign into. As you know, in Goochland County, we have the one GRTC transit stop, but rideshare is provided through Goochland Cares as kind of an on-call basis. I would be interested in promoting the survey sort of constantly from our page. Can you share the link to that? At Sheltering Arms Institute, we have a lot of interest in people who are using it on an ongoing basis for employment, and some are new employers, and then also the intermittent basis with people who are coming to visit folks who are in care. So I'd be interested to promote that survey and put it out there on an ongoing way, and not, once a year or quarterly, but just have it available all the time. That'd be great.
Thank you. We make sure we get that to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions or comments? All right, Miles?
Just to clarify, Madam Chair, is this a requested program just for year one, or would this be just like the existing ride finders continuing through future years? I think that's something that is helpful to clarify for everyone.
I'm sorry, what was the question again, Miles? Was the 2 million for
Is it
up
just
to
for the
3
current
years, or is it per year? Is that the question?
Exactly. Is it to be spread across multiple years, or is it for each year across the program? So the existing 500,000 is annual.
Yeah, I think it was annual. Patricia, Sharika?
Yeah. From my understanding, this would just be a one-time ask, and then with the potential, seeing if this was a successful program, coming back and asking.
Miles, I'm trying to get the exact language. I have so many papers on my desk for the motion that we need.
Can I just jump in real quick, Dirona?
Oh, I'm sorry, Barb. Yes.
So, yeah, it's not a per year request. It's
No.
just a one-time request.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Let me get this one here.
Madam Chair, I don't think there's a language in the agenda packet for this one, but what we need from TAC is a recommendation to either approve or not approve this request and make a recommendation to the policy board, which would then include this funding in the allocations plan for the upcoming fiscal year.
Yeah, so I'm reading the one that says a funding recommendation on each of the, so in particular, this project for incorporation into the draft funding allocation plans. Is that where we're
Yes,
seeking?
ma'am.
Okay, Amy does have her hand up.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Sharika, it might be really helpful for you to have that funding breakdown and of exactly how you're going to use this funding as it goes to the board. This is a lot of money for a one-year program. To not have the details of exactly what is staff time. Are you going to add an additional person? Is this going to be consultants that are going to come in and help? And or how much marketing materials? I know, and also is this just it sounds like it's enhancing GRTC's communications. But it's that's a really significant amount of money. So I think we really need to understand how that's going to be spent.
Very good. Thank you. Barb?
I might have confused matters the way I said what I said. So it's a one-time request that may be spent over multiple years, I guess, right? Just like any other project. You would get $2 million and then maybe, but it would be nice to see kind of a rough idea of sort of how you plan to spend the money over whatever time frame it is.
Yeah, and if I could just quickly add that having compressed some components of the employee trip reduction program that we ran at the city, we are really, and much like some of the gist of CMAQ with piloting, we're really in new waters and trying to figure out how the free fare meshes with getting the employer support in regard to transit across the region. And so that's really what's trying to happen, is integrating those larger efforts of really getting the employee and business community to support transit as well. And I think a lot of the effort is to set that program up, but to hopefully in the future potentially supplant some of that those dollars with that outside dollar. So I think it's a starting point to really help us to begin to gauge really how can we get a really impact on emission reduction if we focus on this. And again, it's been incremental in the past, and I know that the policy board would always ask the city of Richmond when we come, you're like, hey, what is it doing for the rest of the region? So we think that now that it now is set up for the region, that those same benefits that we experienced in the city prior to COVID and free fare, really, how do we navigate that and really still get our businesses to interact with getting more cars off the road? It's a real thing. We have Wood and then Amy.
Just wanted to follow up and say, what everybody's saying is really great and a really excellent goal for this. What I think would be helpful for the TAC is to be able to see some of that laid out, if there's an outreach or engagement plan, some key milestones and key deliverables coming out of this, because as Amy mentioned, this is a large kind of request for funding. And, I'd be interested in kind of how that technical capacity is going to be ramped up, and kind of, what are some targets for year one at the very least. And I think probably the policy board would have similar questions about a $2 million request.
And again, thank you for that input. Amy?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. So can I just verify what you said, Darona? Your employee trip reduction program, has that either been reduced or is that no longer?
Yeah, this funding we would eliminate our program.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And can you remind me how much that was? It was 500,000?
Yeah, it was annually getting about 250,000. Sometimes it would range up, but I would say that was the average annual amount.
So this program is going to basically come in and do what you were doing with the employee trip reduction program, which I remember very well. And so I guess that's good. And I think that might be helpful for people to understand how that's going to really increase maybe the outreach within the city, but also within the region, and that your program is now being sort of merged in to this. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, because again, like I said, from the region, they always said, hey, why don't we have this everywhere else?
Yeah.
And so this is partnering with GRTC to attempt that. And again, I think that some of the targets, sometimes you have to have a dollar amount to begin to set up some of the program. And so I think that it wouldn't be too much potentially in the recommendation that we have some milestone reporting to this group, if not to the policy as well, which of course is already done at the policy level. Is it annually, Miles? But again, increasing it to potentially quarterly. Again, for this particular group with these particular dollars, maybe something that would allow for it to move forward.
Thank you.
All right, so we are seeking an action here. Again, the TAC is asking to provide a funding recommendation of $2 million of the flexible regional funding project. I'm sorry, for the Ride Finder's request, and to be incorporated into the draft funding allocation plan. That was a little messy, but if anyone wants to make that motion.
This is John O'Keefe. I'll make a motion for approval, Madam Chair.
Thank you, John. Do we have a second?
This is Nora, second.
Thank you. Ms. Scott, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Amos?
Aye.
Vice Chair Adams?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Gillespie?
Aye.
Mr. Vadunez?
Aye.
Ms. Smidler?
Aye.
Ms. Inman?
Aye.
Chair Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Bushing?
Aye.
Mr. O'Keefe?
Aye.
Mr. Hudson?
Abstain.
Ms. Robinson?
Aye.
And Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you. And Sharika, again, I think if you want to take some of the feedback from the TAC as we prepare to the next level, that may be helpful. All right,
Yes,
moving
I'm
to
taking notes. Thank you.
thank you. Moving to the next item, this is the remaining of the request, the construction project request for the flexible regional funding. Miles.
All right, thank you again, Madam Chair. This is the last action item we have for you today. So just as a reminder, we started with the pots available here, 25 in RSTP, 7.9 in CMAC, 4.7 estimate in carbon. We just awarded 2 from somewhere in the CMAC or carbon, and staff will figure out which program makes the most sense because those are sort of interchangeable at this point. So what we want to do now is look at the construction projects. And we split these out separately because they're very different on how we look at them compared to that Ride Finders program. So staff has prepared updates of what we presented last month with a recommendation. We followed through on the same recommendation that we had last time to focus on construction phase projects, so things going into construction this fiscal year or next fiscal year. So I'll just walk through each of those. So the first one is Route 1 Shared Use Path, Marywood to Ellingham. This is a portion of the Fall Line Trail in Chesterfield County. It's seen a 57% increase, and the locality is covering $235,000 and requesting $547,000 from the TPO. The project is otherwise fully TPO funded. We are recommending award for that project. It will allow the Fall Line segment as well as the 2 adjoining segments to all be constructed together at the same time. The second project is Jank Road. So as we just heard from the TIP amendment, Jank Road has had a significant cost increase. So we were at about $22 million when we had it the last time it came to the TPO. The current estimate is $36 million. As Mr. Hagan alluded to, there's been a long history with this project. It was bid, awarded, the contract was rescinded, and then it's been bid a couple times since then. So this is really trying to get it across the finish line, right? We're trying to get the project awarded and get it under construction. The locality is covering everything that you can see on the gray bar above the blue dotted line. This is all money that's coming not through the TPO. And so the request here is to help backfill some of the funding that the city's already committed to, with the $6 million coming from the TPO to help support covering this cost. Staff is recommending a conditional award. Our recommendation on the condition is that this is the end, this is the final line, and we're not awarding any more TPO funding on this project. So that would be a $6 million reward in RSTP. And we have plenty of previous funding to help support that. The third project that we're recommending funding on is Deepwater Terminal in the city. It's had a 15% cost increase. The request was for $2 million, which was a 32% increase to the TPO funding. Our request, or our recommendation, is a partial award to that request, which would basically be matching the existing TPO share on the project and asking the city to cover the difference in that cost increase. And so that'd be $951,000 that we're recommending, again, through the RSTP program. And then the fourth project that we're recommending funding on is the Meadowdale Boulevard in Chesterfield County. It's had a 5% cost increase. They requested 8% more in funding from the TPO. But as you can see, there is local contribution as well. So we're not covering the full deficit either. This would be eligible for CMAC or carbon, and it's a relatively small amount. So we're recommending funding on this one as well. Even though the individual increase is small, this one still has to go through the TPO because the cumulative cost increase exceeds that 10% threshold that we've established. And then the remaining 4 projects are all entering the right-of-way phase next year or in 2 years. So there's a little bit more time to make a decision on those projects. So what we're recommending is not making any additional awards at this time, letting the projects continue to develop with a no post, or in some cases, we still have time that we might not need anything right away. And then revisiting the projects as we get closer to construction to see if there's been a shift back downward in those cost estimates or if we are actually locked in at the higher numbers. And so that would include the Fall Line Trail section here, which is Willis down to, I believe it's Galena, but Barb, please jump in and tell me.
Yeah, Galena, a little past to Holiday. Yeah.
Okay. The next one is Old Bermuda 100 and Ramblewood Drive Roundabout. This one had a large increase, mostly attributable to right-of-way and stormwater impacts, I believe. So this one probably isn't going to come down, but wait and see, same thing. The Mayo Bridge we talked about before, just waiting until we have a clearer picture on the overall funding strategy. Since it is such a large deficit, we don't really want to be the first to put a little bit of money and then not see that move forward with a clear plan. And then the final project is Hull Street Phase 3, which again is a significant increase. And our recommendation right now is to wait since right-of-way isn't until fiscal 27. And so again, those last four projects, we're recommending no additional award at this time, but review again as the project continues to advance. And then for the first four that are entering construction, we're recommending the awards as included in your agendas. So with that, I'm going to stop. The requested action today is recommendation to the policy board for approval of some additional award to include in our allocations plans.
Thank you, Miles. I think this was very good and clear. Again, TAC, under the recommend, you can see the first 4 pages have the award amounts. And so do we have a motion for those selected projects or do we have discussion? Joe.
Just for clarification, and this is, Madam Chairman, you may be able to answer this, or Miles. This is the Jenk Road project. The note on the sheet said it would replace local funds to cover part of the increase. Can you just clarify what that means?
Sure, I can clarify that piece, Madam Chair. So what as you saw in the TIP amendment, there was $8-point-something million in additional funding put onto the project through the locality to get it up to the current estimate and to advance it to advertisement. This would help backfill some of those dollars with federal money rather than using all local money to cover the entire cost increase. And as you saw from the table, it was about $14 million that it's grown since the last time the TPO saw it. So we're only covering a portion of that overall growth in the cost estimate.
So that's kind of the case with all of these, because if the TPO funding didn't come through, essentially the locality would need to assign local funds presumably to make up that difference.
Yeah, and I think that's where in this what this group has been doing is trying to share that burden if we can. So it being 14 million, we're just asking for some help with that from this group.
And Madam Chair, if I may, I think the other piece of that, Joe, was the question last time was where's the other funding coming from? So we were trying to clarify that it was locality money that's been covering the balance.
Good. I agree with that. I like that. I think that that we should all have some skin in the game to cover these increases. So I can definitely support this.
Thank you. Amy?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. How much money have we already allocated on these projects? I don't see that. What the request is, but these are additional requests, correct? Like,
yes, that's correct. And I can pull it up quickly if that would be helpful.
yeah, I think that would be an important piece of information to have on these recommendations, just to understand, especially when we're saying no additional, it's conditional. We're not going to add any more because we've already added $20 million. We already have $20 million on a project. Now they're coming back in for an additional, however much, 10 million, whatever the amount might be. And it's in addition to what we've already allocated.
Miles, are you pulling something up?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm pulling those numbers up for each of the projects quickly.
Okay, Nora? We'll come back, Amy, 1 second.
And I will note on the chart, it shows the yellow TPO funding, if that's helpful. I would just kind of follow up on Joe's comment. I had the same confusion on the notes from Jank Road. So if you want to update that before going to the TPO, so it's clear on what's happening with the local funds.
Yes, we can cover that.
Thank you, Nora. Everyone, we're waiting on Miles for the point of clarity before we call for a motion.
I believe I have them here, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, everyone. I'm just pulling them off of a spreadsheet here, but is there a project in particular, Amy, that you were interested in?
I think the Jank Road, did we have money on that one, I think previously?
Yes, I believe that one was 16 and a half or so.
Yeah.
And so there was already a portion covered by the locality. Then the estimate's gone up from 22 to 36, and this extra 6 would help cover part of that cost increase. And so that's our recommendation on this for putting a hard stop on MPO funding is less on the amount and more on just this has been bid multiple times. I think everybody knows this has a long history. So just trying to make sure we get to construction this time.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, this just keeps coming back because of the same reason. And at some point we need to stop. They need to get the work done.
We totally agree.
Which all depends on getting a good, reasonable bid. Yeah, so we'll keep our fingers crossed
Yeah, we'll
for
see
you.
that coming.
It's not a viable project.
Let us see here. Do we have a motion for the recommendation of the 4 projects? UPC 113843, UPC 19035, UPC 104281, and UPC 115784. Motion for recommending inclusion in the funding scenario.
Yes,
Funding allocation plan.
I'll move for approval of the recommended amounts for the projects you just mentioned.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have a second?
This is Barb. I'll second.
Thank you, Barb. Ms. Scott, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Amos.
Aye.
Vice Chair Adams.
Aye.
Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Gillespie.
Aye.
Mr. Badunez.
Aye.
Ms. Smidler.
Aye.
Ms. Inman.
Aye.
Chair Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Hudson.
Aye.
Ms. Robinson.
Aye.
Bushing.
Aye.
Mr. O'Keefe.
Aye.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Moving up to item 11, we have our guest here from the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. She gave us our introduction. I don't know, Miles, if you had any additional or anyone had any additional introduction. Otherwise, Doris, you have the floor.
Well, thank you. Do you hear me well?
We do.
Great, thank you. My name is Doris McLeod, and I'm going to share a presentation here. Are y'all seeing that okay?
Yes.
Great. Super appreciate it. Again, my name is Doris McLeod. I'm an air quality planner for the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. And I'm going to share some information on air quality with you all today. And I appreciate y'all having me here. Pardon me for my fiddling around. I have a new computer and I'm still learning how it works. Yeah. All right, so this slide here shows some background information on two air pollutants that are of concern here in Virginia, ozone and fine particulate matter. Ozone is primarily a component of smog. It is a lung irritant, and it's formed by chemical reactions in the atmosphere. Ozone itself isn't directly emitted into the atmosphere by anthropogenic sources. Rather, it's formed when volatile organic compounds, what we call VOCs, and nitrogen oxides, what we call NOx, are present in the atmosphere, and sunlight sort of catalyzes the reaction to create ozone. So ozone's sort of a summertime pollutant more than it is a wintertime pollutant. Fine particulate matter is a mix of various chemicals that all have diameters of less than 2.5 micrometers. These types of pollutants can cause all sorts of lung ailments and other types of health issues. PM 2.5, fine particulate matter, is a concern year round rather than just being a summertime issue. And when it's an issue depends on a lot of factors, meteorology and the types of emission sources we have and those types of things. Both of these pollutants affect children and the elderly more strongly than a regular healthy adult person. And they also impact people who have more exposure, such as folks who work outside, agricultural workers, for example, or construction workers, just from exposure. So this next slide here shows the evolution of these national ambient air quality standards for these two pollutants. Ozone is on the left and particulate matter is on the right. The Clean Air Act requires that these pollution standards for health-based NACs be reviewed every 5 years. Now, EPA has never, not once, managed to make their 5-year deadline. And that's basically because the standards are highly contentious and they're very complex to set. So ozone started, with a standard of about 0.12 parts per million and has evolved down to about 0.070 parts per million. The form of particulate matter has also evolved. We started with the regulations for what we call total suspended particulate, which was a much larger particulate matter, up to about 70 micrometers in diameter. And it's evolved down to regulating much smaller quantities and much smaller diameters, down to 2.5 micrometers in diameter. So those are all based on science and how science has changed and how the health-based studies have indicated that the standards need to change. Alrighty. So this chart here shows the ozone history for the Richmond-Petersburg area. Generally, Richmond's air quality for particulate matter has historically been very good. We've always had compliant data when the standard has been set or revised. And the area has always been designated attainment with those standards from the commencement of the planning exercises. Ozone's a little different story. Back in the day, Richmond had quite an ozone problem. We were originally designated moderate for both the 1991 and the 1997 ozone acts, and that triggered all sorts of issues and new control programs and transportation conformity, which directly impacted how you all had to operate. For the later standards, and I'm going to show you some air quality monitoring data here in a minute. For the later standards, Richmond was in a lot better shape. For the 2008 ozone acts, we were right at the border, right on the cusp of complying. So the area did a voluntary ozone advance action plan, which was pretty successful. We had a lot of partners, including the Plan RVA folks. And for the 2015 ozone acts, the area was well under the standard. So we were good from the get-go. All right. So this slide here provides you a graphic of where our ozone monitors are located and our PM 2.5 monitors. We have 4 ozone monitors and 5 PM 2.5 monitors in the Richmond region. The triangle indicates where we just have an ozone monitor, and we have a single ozone monitor that's by itself out in Hanover County. Chesterfield site, we have both ozone and PM 2.5 monitors located at that site, not too far from Pocahontas State Park. On the Charles City County monitor, we also have both ozone and PM there. The city of Richmond is just a PM monitor, but it's co-located with a number of other monitors at the Near Road monitoring site, which is just right next to I-95 in Bryant Park. We have a Western Henrico PM 2.5 monitor as well. A lot of these locations are due to siting criteria by EPA. So if you ever want to know, exactly why we have a location where we have a lot of that data on our website, and you can look that up, or you can call me and we can chat. Be happy to talk about it. Generally, air quality has been in good range in the Richmond region, especially for the last several years. And, that's due in large part to control programs here in Richmond and upwind of Richmond, because air pollution does travel. And those control programs include, controls on industry, controls on power plants, controls on cars. We'll see a slide in a little bit that shows how well, some of these control programs have worked, especially the on-road transportation control programs. And in general, DEQ expects these improvements to continue. All right. So this slide here shows our ozone air quality data from the Metro Richmond monitoring charts compared to the 2015, 2008, and 97 ozone acts. And as you can see, it's looking pretty good. There's a reasonable margin of safety between where we are and where the latest standard is. You'll notice that here in 2023, the monitors took a little bit of an uptick. That has a lot to do with wildfires in the West and Canada bringing in a ton of precursors to ozone, especially during the summer. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on a later slide. Helps if I go the right direction. So air quality in Richmond compared to the rest of Virginia. Here, the highest Richmond monitor for any year is in blue, and then the highest monitor in Northern Virginia, Tidewater, Hampton Roads, and Fredericksburg are shown in various colors compared to the various NACs. And you can see that Richmond's right in line with Fredericksburg and Hampton Roads, and they're a bit below Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia is more heavily impacted by traffic, and it's also farther north, obviously. And that means that it's a little bit more impacted by transported pollution from the Midwest. So we have some special challenges up in Northern Virginia. But in general, ozone here in Richmond is doing very well. So these charts here show, yeah, I'm sorry.
Do you mind if I ask? I mean, if you go back to that previous slide, it looks like here that probably is impacted by people working from home, I would think, through COVID, because you start, 2018 to 2020 is when you kind of see that downward slide, and then it kind of goes back up in 2022 when maybe people went back to work. So I just think it's possibly interesting. I know you mentioned fires, that, just the commuters and the impact they might have.
2020 was a natural experiment, right? Because of the shutdown and because of the because of the lack of traffic. And there are some really interesting presentations I've seen using NHTSA data where they've shown that commuter traffic was way down. You know, if people could telecommute, they had to telecommute. Employers were, you know, working furiously to get people to work from home to minimize the impact of the shutdown on their operations. So VMT for passenger vehicles was way down, but VMT for heavy duty trucks was actually kind of up. So it was this really interesting natural experiment, and there are all sorts of academics working furiously right now. You can hear them looking at all sorts of satellite data and meteorological data, ozone data from the monitors, and traffic data to try and tease out what parts of the ozone decrease that we saw in 2020. And you're right, there was a decrease in ozone that has to be attributable in some level to the pandemic shutdown. You know, what part of that ozone decrease was due to some of these pandemic impacts versus the fact that 2020 was actually kind of a good meteorological year in terms of ozone creation. But yeah, that's a really interesting point. And I've got another slide later that looks at just 2020 emissions on a broad picture that you know also asks that same question. Any other thoughts anybody wants to bring up on that before I head out? All right. So this data here shows the fine particulate matter data. The left-hand chart is annual 3-year averages, and the right-hand chart is 3-year averages of the daily values. The annual standard for PM 2.5 was just strengthened to 9.0 micrograms per cubic meter in 2024. So that's a very stringent standard, and as you might imagine, it is under litigation, as every standard has always been, you know, since the beginning of the Clean Air Act. However, the good news is that, you know, Richmond Richmond's data is beneath that standard, and there is a bit of margin of safety. So we feel pretty good about where Richmond is with that standard. And of course, with the 2024 standard, the 24-hour standard, Richmond's well beneath that standard. And in both of these slides, you'll see an uptick in 2023 that's due to some wildfire impacts that we saw. All right, so I think everybody here is probably familiar with ozone air quality action days. These are the forecasted meteorology days, or forecasted days by our meteorologists to try and predict ozone on PM 2.5, air quality in general, especially during the summer months. And a lot of people rely on these forecasts, daycares, schools, all sorts of people look at these forecasts for their day-to-day activities during the summer months, and especially during the summer months. And you can see here, Richmond had very few action days the last couple years. In 2020, I think, Amy, you mentioned this, 19 and 20, we had no action days. And again, you know, how much of that 2020 no action day is due to the fact we had pretty good meteorology versus we had almost no passenger vehicle emissions compared to previous years? That's a good question. But you can also see that, for example, 2018 and 2019, we had 1 and 0 action days. So that indicates that in general, you know, our air quality is pretty good here in Richmond. We have pretty decent air quality. I did want to talk a bit about wildfires, since wildfires did impact the Richmond area here in 2023. And you all may remember going outside and smelling smoke and maybe even seeing it in the air. We have some pictures from VDOT cams and whatnot where you can see the haze. It's pretty interesting. Most of that wildfire smoke originated, believe it, in Canada. 2023 was a historically bad wildfire year, especially for Canada, but also in the southwestern United States and in all places, New Jersey. New Jersey had several wildfires where the smoke actually impacted Virginia, but mainly it came from Canada. The green chart here shows typical wildfire trends from Canada for 2023 and prior years. 2024 data hasn't been published yet. And it shows approximately the amount of acreage burned in Canada each year. And 2023 was the worst on record, where, you know, we had a land mass that was larger than the state of Georgia burn in Canada. Now, most of these forests in Canada, excuse me, allergies. Most of these forests in Canada are quite inaccessible. They are not, they don't really have roads to them. You know, the only way that these wildfires can be, quote unquote, fought is through airdrops of water, airdrops of fire retardants and those types of things. So it makes land management and forest fire management extremely difficult. Another interesting thing about wildfire smoke is that just because you can see it on a satellite, and this is a satellite picture here from June 8th, 2023, and you can see the cloud cover, right? But you can also see this brown schmutz, as my mother would say. My mother was German. Brown schmutz that came out from Canada, covered the Midwest, went down through Kentucky and North Carolina, and then circulated right back up to Virginia and Northern Virginia. And all of this brown stuff is wood smoke. And so that was particularly heavily impacted day. Now, the interesting thing about it is, right, it can stay up in the troposphere and be seen by the satellite, but it doesn't really impact us at ground level. But it can also come down to where it impacts us at ground level, and that's where we smell it and we see it, and it impacts our monitors, and we all cough a lot and it, you know, are generally unhappy. And on this particular day, here on the left, this is a picture from Air Now, and it shows our PM monitors, both sensors, like the purple air sensors that people can buy and put in their front yard if they're interested in that kind of stuff, or federal reference method sensors, monitors, like I showed you on the map, where, you know, they're rigorously QA'd and they have very stringent standards for QA that they have to meet. You can see that right around Richmond is where that plume started coming down into ground level, and, you know, there's the red and the purple showing up, and it stayed ground level and mixed with some other stuff, and it was just a miserable day up in Northern Virginia, as you can see by all the purple and maroon dots. But it wasn't too pleasant here in Richmond that day either, with a lot of red dots. So, you know, the takeaway here, you know, what does all this mean going forward? Well, it means that forestry management practices are becoming a lot more important. Now, in Canada, where you can't even get to some of these forests, you know, forestry management practices are minimally helpful. But you know, out in the Southwest, the forests are managed pretty well. And it just shows you the importance of trying to minimize these forest fires as best we can. And it also speaks to how much more stringent the standards are than they used to be. While 2023 was a historically bad year, we've had other bad years for forest fires, and they've just not been as impactful in the monitoring data. And part of that is because the standard's much lower than it used to be in the past for ozone and for PM 2.5. It's also speaking to the fact that other emission sources have reduced so much. You know, cars emit a whole lot less than they used to. Trucks emit a whole lot less than they used to. Factories, electricity generating units. They're all much cleaner than they used to be. And I have another slide, one more slide to talk about that. And it's something that our meteorologists have started keeping a very close eye on, especially during the summer when they predict these air quality action days. Their predictions for yellow, orange, red, and purple do change depending on what's burning, where it's burning, and whether or not they think the meteorology is going to bring that into Virginia. All right, so one more slide, and then I'll stop and answer any questions that you guys might have. Why is air quality getting better? Well, air quality is getting better because emissions, anthropogenic emissions, are reducing. This chart shows NOx on the left 5 bars, SO2 in the middle 5 bars, and VOC, volatile organic compounds, in the last 5 bars, so 15 bars across a slide. And you can see here, this is 2008 through 2020. And 2020 is definitely impacted, I think, as Amy pointed out, by the reductions, at least in VMT for passenger vehicles. And you see a good drop in emissions. So I seem to have lost my cursor. We're going to do this without my cursor. You see a good drop in emissions between 2008 and 2020 in NOx. And part of that is from highway vehicles, the yellow bar. And clearly there's more drop in NOx from the highway vehicles during 2020 than we would have expected. And that's because VMT was depressed for passenger vehicles. Part of that was balanced out by the increase in the VMT for heavy duty diesel vehicles, but still, there was definitely some impact from COVID there. We also see a large reduction in NOx from fuel combustion at industrial boilers, commercial boilers, and electricity generating units. And that's mainly due to units getting more efficient, going to cleaner fuels, and going to renewables. The next 5 bars are SO2. We've had a huge drop in SO2. And the reason we've had a drop in SO2 is because folks have gone to cleaner fuels. People have stopped burning coal. That's basically what it is. Coal is much more expensive than it used to be. Natural gas is much cheaper. And there are a lot of renewable options coming online that have helped out a great deal. So even though we need more energy than we ever have before, electricity is actually getting much cleaner. And that's important for fine particulate matter because sulfur dioxide does contribute to sulfates, which increase fine particulate matter. And then finally, volatile organic compounds, you can see a big reduction or fairly big reduction in both on-road vehicles and the yellow bar and the green bar, which is industrial sources. Industrial sources have been reducing in large part because they figured out that VOCs is money going up the stack. So if they can make something water-based rather than volatile organic compound-based, they are much happier with that. Printing, for example, has gotten much cleaner over the years. The Reynolds printing presses and all those other things in the city of Richmond used to be quite large emitters of VOC, and they've discovered that they can do the exact same thing with almost no emissions using water-based inks and things like that. So that's all good news. And we expect a lot of these emission reductions to continue into the future. Now, the 2023 data, which has not got any COVID impacts in it for emissions, should be available soon. So hopefully I'll be able to add to these bars and we can see, is there an uptick from 2020 to 2023? Did the emissions continue reducing? That's all. It's all good information to know. So I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions I can answer for anybody.
Thank you. Very good information. Sharon.
No questions, Doris. I just wanted to say thank you. This was very informational and I found it very interesting. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm more than happy to come talk with you anytime.
Nora.
Agreed, Doris. Thank you. It's always nice to see you. Thanks for, I feel like you've been around with us for a long time. So I appreciate that, especially when you bring good news. Probably not related, but personally, I've learned a lot about radon recently, and I know that's not a DEQ thing. I think it's more Department of Health, but I'm going to share a link in the chat for more information on radon that comes from basements. And if you don't know about it, please look at it. Definite air quality issues. So thanks again, Doris.
Yeah, that's a very important air quality issue, indoor air quality, but air quality nonetheless. And I think I read somewhere that it's like the second leading cause of lung cancer, something like that. So it's important. Yeah, definitely.
Caroline?
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you. And as a full-time transit user, commuter, and someone whose lung muscles don't work and can't even barely be around smokers, air quality is very important to me. And those were some tough days, not just for me, but for some of my other disabled peers who had even more breathing struggles. So I take that very seriously. Just wanted to say thank you as I prepare to leave for my next meeting. Bye.
All right, thank you. We have Miss Martha.
Hi, good morning. I guess a comment and a question. Nora, thanks for bringing up the issue of radon, just so that everyone is aware. That was a new hazard that we identified and included in the last update to the regional hazard mitigation plan. So for the sort of benefit of everybody, that's something that was added in the last update, and I would expect will continue based on the research of the increasing levels of radon in our area and heading over into Tidewater. So mitigation strategies are part of that planning process and would continue in next year's update of that plan. Doris, I was kind of curious, and I know we don't have time today, so maybe you and I could connect offline, but just hearing the presentation and the good news, I'm just kind of curious, and I'm sorry because your knowledge of the science behind this is well beyond my ability to ask this question intelligently, but I think our staff was sharing with me a couple of months ago that there are triggers to the emission levels as we think about the growth of the data center development in our region. And I might not be asking that quite in the right way, but is there a chance for me to get a little bit more educated on those implications and thinking most specifically about our air quality agreements that we have with DEQ and the air quality action team, or that body that doesn't convene right now, but is triggered when
Be happy.
levels go up?
Yeah, I would be happy to
Okay.
talk with you about that. Yeah, data centers is a big issue across the Commonwealth, more probably in Northern Virginia than in Metro DC, but it's a growing issue everywhere. And you know that the JLARC report that came out last year was really informative, and I thought
Okay.
that the JLARC folks spent probably 4 months with our permitting and compliance folks. I mean, we saw them every day.
Okay.
And they worked extremely hard to understand the issues and the challenges that we face in permitting those data centers. And also, I think, in some of the land use issues, which of course isn't a DEQ issue, it's a locality issue, but trying to describe some of the land use issues that are wrapped up in the data center development process and how they impact our grid, which is extremely important. So yeah, be happy to talk with you about what I know and provide you with the technical experts on our side that can, give you the real nitty-gritty if you really want to hear it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think it came up in the context of the climate pollution reduction plan and our regular touch base calls we do with WashCog. So that makes sense to me that it was flagged there. I think Northern Virginia is still in non-attainment. Is that right?
They are. Yeah,
Yeah,
they are
that's what I
a
thought.
moderate non-attainment area for the 2015 ozone acts, although EPA the data is actually compliant now. You know, they were above the standard, they got designated non-attainment, and they've been working to improve their air quality, and their air quality is actually below the standard. And EPA just published a clean data determination for the area. Yeah, that was a big milestone. But we still have a lot of work to do up there. We have to develop a maintenance plan and a few other things. We've got quite a bit of work up there left to do. But yeah, Northern Virginia definitely is a nexus for our data centers.
Well, thank you. Do we have any additional questions? Well, Doris, you're welcome anytime to join us and update us. But again, as we've talked about all through the agenda, air quality is definitely something that this region has on its radar and wants to maintain a healthy environment for everyone. So thank you for all of your work that you do in keeping it that way. Good air quality. Moving to, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, Doris. Moving on to item 12, transportation agency updates. Let's see. I think we have DRPT first. Wood, do you have anything?
Sure, I'll be real quick. Just a reminder that the FY26 5303 application, this is one of the primary funding streams for MPOs, is open until May 1st and accessible through the DRPT Web Grants portal. I'll also mention that the Virginia Transit Association is hosting their annual conference here in Richmond. That's on May 28th and 29th at the Richmond Marriott. Information can be found on the Virginia Transit Association's website regarding registration for that. That concludes the updates that I have for today.
Thank you. And Ms. Scott, if we make one note to update the agenda to change it to Mr. Wood Hudson's name for the update. GRTC.
Hi, I'll be doing it today instead of Corey this time. So just a couple of quick things to cover. We're wrapping up our pole station modifications. So I'm sure you've seen some construction along Broad Street as those have been underway to make room for our new 60-foot articulated buses that should be here in July. We also wanted to share that our new public safety ambassadors, if you've seen them out and about, they have soft launched in their temporary black and white gear, switching soon to GRTC embroidered gear. These individuals have de-escalation training as well as customer service and first aid response training so that they can just better equip our riders and the public with means of getting around and answer questions that may pop up in the field. And then Dominion Energy has completed 5 EV charging stations to power our Link EV fleet. So we're just excited to have those more available and utilize more. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Ride finders up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. Did want to let everybody know that last month we did start a new 7-passenger van pool from the New Kent County Public Works park and ride lot to the Pentagon. A lot from that group are coming from the Virginia Beach area and catching the van pool there and going to the Pentagon. We participated in the Southampton Elementary Schools, Richmond Public Schools Career Day and presented information on sustainability, carpools, public transit, as well as careers. We're also attended the Virginia Department of Human Resource Management Benefits Fair, where we communicated with state workers and several agencies about Ride Finder services. We also talked with several people from VDOT who are getting ready to move from downtown Richmond to the new headquarters out in Mechanicsville. And we have several more events coming up here in this month and next. We have one with VRS here in the next 2 weeks, and also with the city of Richmond next month that we'll be attending. And I think the biggest highlight that I wanted to present was that we received notification from the Association for Commuter Transportation that GRTC has achieved the requirements for ACT's inaugural accreditation transportation demand management organization status through Ride Finders. This accreditation was done with working with GRTC and talks about the administrative excellence in the TDM field and the continuous improvement. This was a year-long project that we had worked on, gathering and inputting documents needed for this process. Worked with GRTC staff with putting this together. GRTC is one of 9 organizations in the United States to achieve this status, and the only one in the state of Virginia to get it. And this is an accreditation that will last for 3 years. So I did want to highlight that project to you all that we worked on, and we GRTC and Ride Finders are both very proud of this.
Thank you. Very good. Last, VDOT.
Okay, a few items. First, a reminder to everybody that we have our SYIP spring public hearing. It'll be at 4 p.m. on April 22nd at the VDOT Richmond District office in South Chesterfield. Also want to remind everybody that we now have the SMART portal open for pre-application for transportation alternatives and revenue sharing, and that'll be open for pre-applications until May 30th. And as you're thinking about your applications, we really encourage you all to reach out to us, work closely with us when it comes to assessing your scope, budget, and schedule that you put in the application. It could save some work down the road if we coordinate early on those things. Let's see, another thing we are going to have on April 23rd from 9 to 11, a training session at the Richmond District office on all things federal funding and the federal strategy. So if anybody's interested in that, you would reach out to Amy Ettinger, or you could to me if you need to, and I can get you hooked up with her on that. Also, if anybody has new staff and they're needing access to the SMART portal and you need an account set up, reach out to me to do that. I can establish a new account for anybody if that's needed. So let's see, I think that that is it for me.
Thank you. Very good information. Just a reminder, item 13, everybody check out the Better Together connector. Do we have any TAC member comments? Nora.
Hey, I know we all got to get going. But I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware of the smart scale hearing that's coming up. Maybe Miles can provide more information, or Larry can. For us, we have a project that was recommended by staff that was kind of lower on the list, and we're concerned about it falling off the list because there's a push for Northern Virginia, that they were concerned that Richmond got too many projects and was recommended for too much money. This is my understanding. And so anything that you all can do to come out and support the Richmond projects would be greatly appreciated by Ashland. We're hoping that ours stays above the line.
Thank you. And do we have any just additional information, either Miles or we lost our VDOT on when that, there's a VDOT, Mr. Hagan. Yes, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So, Nora, I think what you're talking about is the spring public hearing on April 22nd. There isn't a separate smart scale public hearing, but the spring meeting is where everybody on this call that represents a locality that has a staff recommended scenario smart scale project needs to ensure your highest level folks there to advocate for those projects. Because Nora, you are right. We have a target on our back because the Richmond District received so much in the recommended staff scenario, and other districts, localities throughout the state, they want to try to make the case for that money going to them. So your biggest and best opportunity is going to be at the spring SYIP public hearing, because if you think about who's going to be there, typically the secretary's there, the commissioner's there, DRPT director is there. All the people are there that you want to have hear your higher up folks talking about the importance of your project and why it needs to stay in the staff recommended scenario.
Very good. Thank you. Barb?
This is Ferry. I was wondering whether Richmond District staff might be able to put together kind of a comparison through the years of Smart Scale and how much money the districts have gotten. There's some rounds that we probably didn't do so well. And it's not like, you know, maybe we're doing great this time, but it's making up for other times when a lot of money was going to Nova and Hampton Roads. It would be interesting to have that data and present that to Rex Davis so that he's got that available.
And who do you think,
Thanks,
Barb?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Larry, is that something that you think that your group could pull together? Or is that something that a locality would need to do?
Oh, no, when it comes to the bigger picture, right, we can do that. You all shouldn't have to have the burden of that. And it's easy enough to pull together that information to compare past smart scale rounds and how we fared. And I think with every round, typically there's a table that shows that. So yeah, that should be easy enough. I've made a note and I'll get with Liz and we'll see what we can do for that. And so is that something that you all want us to provide to you?
If you could
Or
provide
just
it to
have
Miles and
Mhm.
to Miles, and we'll have Miss Scott distribute it to the TAC.
Okay.
But if
All
it's bad
right.
news, keep it under wraps.
Yeah, if it's bad
It
news, you
won't
won't hear
be.
from me.
Awesome. Amy.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair. Hey, Larry, great to see you. So what is the path forward? Like we have the staff recommended scenario now, and we know the CTB will come forward with sort of their ultimate final project recommendation. So how will that work? So we all go to the 6-year meeting, and then what happens after that? And
Yeah,
what is the
so good question, Amy. The interim time between the staff recommended scenario and the CTB approving the final smart scale list for the final SYIP, basically in June, is a time period where you all need to coordinate closely with our CTB member to make sure he understands the importance of keeping these projects in the staff recommended scenario, because I think that in the interim time between the staff recommended scenario and the final is when there's a lot of potential negotiation and discussion that happen between CTB members, the secretary, all of that. So you have this several month time period from that recommended scenario to the final where that's what's going on and translates to what is eventually approved in June. So there are no like specific milestones or points in that interim time period. It's just a couple of months where there is all of that discussion between the districts and their CTB members, the localities and their CTB members, and the secretary. All of that's going on. So you just want to make sure you get your voice injected into that. And the best way to do it is set up a meeting with our CTB member, Rex Davis. Very approachable guy, really wants to talk to everybody out there localities wise.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Do we have anything else? Very good meeting today. Thank you everyone for your input. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, May 13th at 9:00 a.m. If there is nothing else, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.